Hey guys, what is up? Kid here, Burn One Shadowverse Evolved channel, bringing you another top 4 deck review from the two most recent regionals. This is coming a little bit later than I would like, but I've been traveling a lot for holidays on top of multiple regionals coming up that I'm going to. Grand Archive Ascent happening in NorCal pretty soon. I will be going to this weekend actually, and then as well as Pennsylvania. I've been prepping for that, and I know Set 7 dropped Verdant Steel, so we're on to a different meta. But let's just take a look at these regionals and see how these decks fared out. I'm pretty sure it's kind of exactly what I figured for like how this meta was going to play out. I'm very interested to see what happens in Set 7 meta, but let's just jump right into it, guys. All right, so first up here, we have Houston, Texas here. I actually went to this one. I went 4-3 myself. Unluckily lost to two of my friends in like the final rounds that just stopped me from being able to top 8 this event, unfortunately. But let's look at the tournament deck distribution here. It's about what I expected. Pretty high representation of Rune, obviously, along with Idolmaster, Cinderella Girls. Both highly represented decks that are just very consistent and are very good for what they do. I think these are like the two powerhouses of the meta. And Abysscraft here being the third highest deck representation here. And spoiler alert, there is an Abysscraft in top 4. Ryan Wibberley, a friend of mine, and who was actually on this channel too for I think a set review or something a while back. Also world participant for the first time, but now got his invite again. He was able to make top 4 here. Abysscraft was probably slightly like one of those decks, like I said before. I don't feel it's like consistent enough all the time to be winning these events. But you know, Ryan figured out some stuff here for Abysscraft. But surprisingly, still Abysscraft still pretty high representation, 15%. I would expect it to be around the 10% range, but people just love their Abysscraft. You know, there's two different versions. You know, aggro and then control. Obviously, I think everyone loves Kensetsu. The control stuff variant is just very, very powerful when you hit those high rolls, and even some of the mid games. If you don't draw horribly at brick, you have very solid games the later the game goes on. But as far as everything else, representation looked about right here. Only a couple sword people. I guess sword this meta was just super doo-doo, I guess, is the best way to put it. But yeah, let's just jump into the first place deck here. Bomi's the Cinderella Girls list. It's cool aggro. I mean, what is there really to talk about at this point? We know how powerful this deck is. I'm not seeing anything too spicy in this list, really. But we already know it's very powerful in being really aggressive, presenting boards and like pushing damage very early on to usually out-tempo things like Kuon and stuff. And into the control matchups, it tries to go underneath control so it can steal the game from them essentially before they can set up their game plan. It's a very solid deck. I think no one's very surprised here at all for what is being played here. Next, this is Wib. So this is Ryan's deck. Very, very solid list overall for Abyss, Control Abyss. If you notice too, we have 2 Wings of Lust, 2 Angelic Snipes, offering basically 4 Angelic Snipes essentially for the deck, as well as Wings of Lust adding that extra high roll potential to be able to discard Israfil from your hand or Gensetsu or whatever to set up the turn 6 Death's Breath if you draw into a Death's Breath on curve. Especially going second Death's Breath into Israfil on 6 Evo is very backbreaking for a lot of decks. It's one of the best ways to, basically guarantee your game, because once you start looping Israfils, it gets out of control, and it's one of your few answers you have towards wide boards and dealing with the one weakness I think Abyss has in this set or this meta is that people who just present bodies up boards consistently very quickly. If Abyss doesn't have the right tools at the right time to deal with the early pressure, sometimes that's enough to just take control of the game, especially when you yourself have answers for everything they're playing. One of the big things that I would note here is that he does play Kawi as a 3-of, which I think makes a lot of sense in this meta. I didn't really spend a lot of time on Abyss, but I think if I spent more time testing and figuring things out, Kawi is probably the right answer to be playing in this meta for set 6, that is. There's just a lot of aggressive decks, and this is just basically Themis on a body, essentially. Prussia and I have talked about it before, how this card was very undervalued. I even undervalued it early on, and then after playing with it, immediately realized actually it's kind of like a Themis, because they either give you a big heal or they trade in inefficiently into it to make sure that you don't get a heal. So Kawi as a 3-of, so you can always hit that turn 5 Kawi, going into like turn 6 Gensetsu or turn 6 Death's Breath Israfil, something like that is pretty obnoxious. So that's the way the deck can stay in the game against these aggro matchups, because if you do miss some of the removal you have in the early stages of the game, even though this deck has a lot of early game removal, because like I said, a lot of bodies on the board very quickly is trouble for Abyss a lot of the times. But if you can kind of slow them down and then get to this Kawi turn or Gensetsu turn, then everything's going to be very, very good for you. Evo deck wise, it's pretty standard here. 3, 2, 2, 2, 1. I don't expect anything different here. We just have all the good stuff here. Barzensky obviously being 3 for 1 in a lot of times once you get into later game. Otherwise, it's just a very solid 2 for 1 early on to deal with the aggro matchups. We have Rolnai for, taxing your opponent when they cast spells, along with the hand discard, and then the Gensetsu triple Evo, obviously because Gensetsu followed by another Evo Gensetsu is really backbreaking for a lot of decks. They'll have very easy board wipes. And then, Israfil as like one of the huge finishers. One of the biggest issues with the deck, obviously, is that you don't have any really burst potential, but the big thing is that when you get into the late game, you just present these bodies over and over again until your opponent just doesn't have the resources anymore to really deal with it. So yeah, congratulations to Ryan. Third place, G. Gordon's Runecraft deck. Obviously, this is a Kuan list. Quick overview. Yeah, some notable things here that they included was they're playing, what is this guy's name? I always forget his name. Yeah, Mr. Heimlin here. Optional card. I like it sometimes, and sometimes I hate the card. Personally, I don't play it in my list, but I totally understand the high rolls off of it feel really, really great, obviously, and it's just very good to deal with bodies on board and leave you a 4/4 while also hopefully generating more graveyard there to get the Kuan online quicker, so your turn 7 Kuan plays into D-Shift happen more frequently the games you do see the turn 5 Heimlin. One other thing of note too, to kind of fit like the double Heimlin in here, they decided to only play 2 Merlins. Not sure what was the exact reasoning. I think 3 Merlin is just so important, but obviously they also are playing 2 Chain of Calling, probably recognizing that finding Curse Crafters, finding Heinlein and stuff is very, very important into some matchups. It's a really, really powerful card. A lot of times I was considering even playing a second Chain of Calling here. But they went for the double one and was able to fit it in their list at least. We got the 4 snipes in the early game there to help with the pressure. Only 2 insights, which I think makes sense. Insight's a pretty easy card to cut, even though it's a very cheap draw, making your deck relatively like 1 card cheaper, I guess, or 1 card less, essentially, basically getting to play like a 37, 38 card deck instead, sorta. Fine list overall. Besides that, I think everything looks pretty standard. They opted for not going the the penguin route. They went for the owls instead. Personally, I think I like the owls a little bit better because you don't have to use an evo slot for some of that stuff. Though in this deck here, they didn't really have to use all their evo slots because they only played 2 Merlin. And then they also played the one of Fire Chain, which is just a good anti-aggro card into these like little weenie bodies that are coming out from IMS aggro. And here's the Evo deck. Obviously, we have a Penguin Wizard in here because, they just put 10 cards in their Evo deck. They don't really need it. Same thing with 3 Merlin here, even though they only play 2 in their list, unless this list on the website is wrong. Yep, solid list over around. Like the list. Not a fan of only 2 Merlin. I would have played 3, maybe cut the Chain of Calling. I'm not sure. But, they got 3rd place and I didn't. So, yeah, what am I to say anything? And then 4th place here is Oops or Oops or whatever, how you ever say their name. I'm sorry. We have Passion top 4ing here. This is a deck I would love to play at regionals, but I just don't have faith of high rolling all day. The deck is insane when it gets to high rolls. There's not really much to talk about how the deck works because the entire point of the deck is you hopefully have your opponent doesn't have any really good interaction early game. So you get to that turn 4, tap 3 bodies. We play Mio Honda. Try to high roll off of that. A lot of times hitting the 7/7 Storm while blowing up the board is really, really good. Then Miyohana comes back to your hand. And then on turn 6 later on, or even if stuff lives the following turn, you can once again do the play the 4-drop to tap 3 things, play Miyohana and some things again, so forth. I really like this deck. It's a lot of fun. It is so much fun. Outside of that, though, nothing too spicy here. The one thing I saw here is this here, Akane Ihino. Not a lot of lists run this, but this also being essentially a 4th copy of like a potential 7 damage storm is nice because of the strike, deal 2 damage to each enemy leader, and then you could pay 2 and banish a lesson to give this storm, and it having rush and a cell hitting things that are standing 2 gives you an out to some people who hold back things, so you can go ahead and remove those things while also still like dealing some damage into your opponent as well. Like it a lot. Very cool list. Unfortunately, I think the deck kind of falls off after this. Otherwise, I'd probably at least try this list a little bit, because it's honestly a lot of fun. If you guys still have the card and still having fun with IMAX, I recommend trying out Passion. It's just so fun. Evo deck here, pretty standard. Nothing really too crazy like standing out here. The one up here for the high roll into late game stuff. Only playing one, I believe her name's Yui, right? Yeah, Yui here. Kind of surprising that they're only playing one here, but I mean, with the other stuff they have in here, not surprised really. They just want more of the consistency stuff in here, and just doing the one of Yui here, just to, you know, obviously get the 3-drop spell and things like that to, you know, kind of pop off that way. So yeah, congratulations to you. The next event we have here should be here. Yeah, Yangon, Myanmar. I butchered that probably, most likely. Once again, we're seeing a kind of the same pattern here. Runecraft being a pretty high percentage, 17%. Bizcraft and Havencraft in this regional are having a pretty strong representation of 11.76%. Pretty solid overall. No Umusume players. There's no horse girl lovers out there. And then 41% of Idolmaster Cinderella girls. Not surprising overall. Like I said before, it's a really powerful deck, tier 1 deck that, you know, also is super cheap to be playing into this meta. First place here, we have another Kuon list. This one has some other spicy stuff going on here. We only have a 1 of Penguin, surprisingly. But they are playing this little Demon Flame Mage as well that evos and deals 2 to the board for essentially 4. I'm surprised they decided to play that, because it's not very easy to search that card out, so you have to kind of like naturally draw into it, which can be kind of annoying. I prefer to play the 5-drop Alchemic Lore for board wipes, because it does hit the board for 4, which clears more things, and it's around the same timing as this card essentially. Besides that though, I think everything else is pretty standard, other than the one copy of Execution. I forgot the name of this card. Execution. That's kind of surprising. I'm wondering why they chose that. Maybe they were worried about amulets hitting the board and stuff like that. I guess if they were worried about Sword at all, which didn't have a hyper representation, but Sword gets rid of that. Maybe Lashena or something. They need to get rid of the healing amulet or something like that. Interesting choice there for removal. My assumption is that there must have been some amulet thing running around maybe that they were worried about. But yeah, I mean, Execution is still a really good card. And then Evo deck here, obviously we got the 2 Demon Callers, because we are playing the one of what is it? I already forgot the name of this card. A Demon Flame Mage, that's right. 3 Merlin, 1 Penguin, and then 3 Curse Crafters, as always, because Curse Crafter is busted. We have Lands Abysscraft deck here. Let's take a look. It's pretty similar. Yeah, this is a little bit closer to what I was playing, other than the apostle stuff going on here. They opted obviously for like the more early protection with the Demon Punk Devil. I like our Demonium Punk Devil. I like this card a lot. You know, it forces some awkward trade scenarios too if you do give it Bane, depending on what's going on. And they have 2 of Gravy here for like the board wipe and extra push. Oddly enough, they are playing 1 of the chat ringside announcer here. Obviously, we're searching out our, I believe Gensetsu is the right card, right? Arena, yeah. Gensetsu coming, Gensetsu searcher, stuff like that. Interesting pick. Not sure why they chose it. Maybe they just had 1 extra card. They didn't really know what to put in there. And they went with that because they just had the room. Interesting to see why they're playing that. And then they do the 1/1 line Crazed Executioner. Crazed Executioner, I always feel like is slept on. I know you take 2 damage from this card, but a lot of times having the exact card you need to pick out from their hand to like totally disrupt their next turn, or even like remove one of their win conditions, is absolutely huge a lot of the time, in my opinion. A 1/1 line is kind of weird, but I mean, it seems fine. They opted obviously to cut Marzensky and a Marzensky Evo to kind of fit that, which I'm not sure if I 100% agree, but they are playing Apostle of Silence as well as a 2 of Evo in here. Interesting list. No Israfils in this one, so they do more likely than not get kind of blown out by the really aggressive early game matchups. That's probably why they have the 3 Bell Ringers and the 3 Punk Devils to be able to like slow them down, along with basically 4 snipes essentially, with the 3 Surefire Bullets and Thundering Roar as well, to like deal with those little bodies early on. So congratulations to you. On to the 3rd place deck, Mello's Cinderella Girls deck here, which is, once again, this is another cool aggro list. Once again, not a lot to talk about because almost all the lists have essentially the same like 38 cards with maybe 2 card difference sometimes, maybe even 1. Super standard list. Congratulations to you, man. I can't really comment much on this list because there's not much really to add. And yeah, that's it. They only played the interesting. They only put the top 3. Maybe they didn't have a huge turnout. I'm interested to know how many people actually showed up to this event. Then maybe it was not enough to cut to top 8 and then show top 4 for some reason. Not really sure. But yeah, congratulations to all of you. Hopefully, I end up seeing you guys at Worlds if I get my invite this year. Other than that, we get to say goodbye to this Idolmaster CP6 meta, essentially, or a CP02 meta. 02, right? Yeah. And, you know, it's the set 6 stuff. Kind of sad to see this meta go, but also didn't really care for it at the same time. Really looking forward to Verdant Steel. I've been testing that a lot lately. A lot of Verdant Steel videos will be coming out shortly after this one, so look forward to that. I should be getting deck profiles up and possibly match videos. And I think Fish and I might do a 1st to 5 on certain matchups, depending on what we want to do. But yeah, with that being said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that. It does help motivate me to keep going and making this content. And hopefully I see you guys in our next video. Later, everyone.